He waits until you are looking directly at him. Then, with his eyes still locked on yours, he picks up your shoe, walks it slowly across the room, and drops it in front of you like a challenge, right in full view, as if he wants to be caught. If your dog has ever done something like this, chewed the couch while staring at you, ignored a command he knows perfectly well the moment you walked back through the door, you have probably felt the same sinking thought every owner feels. Something is wrong with how I am raising him. But that thought is not the truth. It is the beginning of a far stranger story about what is actually happening inside your dog's mind in that exact second. Most people believe this kind of behavior means the dog is spoiled, poorly trained, or simply testing boundaries the way a rebellious teenager might. The instinct is to reach for a stricter command, a firmer no, because the assumption is that the dog is choosing defiance. He knows the rule, he is breaking it anyway, case closed. But here is the surprising part. Researchers studying dog behavior noticed something that did not fit that story at all. This particular kind of misbehavior, the kind that happens directly in front of the owner, especially right after the owner leaves and comes back, was not showing up in every dog. It was clustering around a very specific group of dogs, and an even more specific group of owners. In the late 1990s, a researcher named Joseph Topol ran an experiment never done on dogs before. He borrowed a method built to study human infants, called the strange situation, created by psychologist Mary Ainsworth to understand how babies bond with their caregivers. A baby is placed in a room with their mother. A stranger enters, the mother leaves, and researchers watch how the baby reacts, especially at reunion. Some babies were upset when their mother left but calmed happily when she came back. Others barely reacted at all. But a third group became distressed when the mother left, and at her return, reached for her while stiffening their bodies, almost angry that they had needed her. Ainsworth called this anxious ambivalent attachment, and traced it to one specific pattern in the caregiver: not neglect, not cruelty, inconsistency. Topol ran the same experiment with dogs and their owners instead of babies and mothers, and the results were extraordinary. Dogs showed the same three attachment patterns humans do. Secure dogs stayed calm when their owner returned. Avoidant dogs barely acknowledged the return. And the anxious ambivalent dogs wanted contact and rejected it in the same breath, whining for attention and then walking away from it. You have probably seen this yourself without ever having a name for it. The dog who is desperate to see you the moment you walk in, and then, seconds later, grabs something forbidden and marches it past you, like a small act of rebellion. That is not defiance in the way we usually think of it.
That is what an anxious, ambivalent attachment looks like when it is acted out through behavior instead of words. Because a dog cannot say, "I missed you," and "I am furious that I had to miss you" in the same sentence.
If this behavior is not about obedience and it is not about intelligence, then what is actually producing it? And this is where the story stops being about the dog entirely and starts being about something the owner is doing without realizing it. Ainsworth's research identified the caregiving pattern most associated with this anxious attachment, and it was not what people expected. Not a cold parent, not an absent one. The parent who was unpredictable, sometimes deeply present, other times distracted or rushed, with no consistent signal the child could use to know which version of the parent they were about to get. The child's nervous system, instead of learning "I am safe," learned something far more exhausting. "I do not know what I am going to get, so I have to stay alert." Now translate that into a dog's daily life, because the parallel is uncomfortably exact. Think about a dog whose owner sometimes greets him with total enthusiasm, and other times walks straight past him to check a phone. To a human, this feels like small, ordinary life happening. But a dog is not measuring your intentions. He is measuring the pattern. And when the pattern has no pattern, his nervous system starts organizing itself around uncertainty instead of security. There is a separate mechanism doing damage here called intermittent reinforcement. Rewards that arrive unpredictably create stronger, more persistent responses than rewards that arrive every single time. The same principle that makes a slot machine more compelling than a vending machine.
A dog who receives warmth every time simply learns that the warmth is there. A dog who receives it only sometimes never gets to stop checking, because his brain has been quietly trained to treat you as unpredictable, exactly the way it treats a slot machine. That is not a flaw in the dog. That is his nervous system doing precisely what it is built to do.
But there is something even more important still to come, because this pattern does not stay contained to the moments you are actually in the room. Separation-related destruction has been studied extensively, and researchers found that dogs with insecure attachment do not destroy things randomly. They target objects that carry the owner's scent most strongly: shoes, worn clothing, the corner of a cushion the owner sits on every evening. For years, this was read as spite. Behaviorists now understand it differently. A dog in attachment-related distress is not trying to punish you. He is trying to hold on to you. That shoe is clung to because it smells like the only source of security he has. And in your absence, he is doing the only thing he knows how to do with an emotion that has no other outlet. This reframes the dog who does something forbidden directly in front of you, staring right at you while he does it. He may be testing the one thing his nervous system has never been able to reliably predict. Will you respond the same way this time? Psychologists call this protest behavior, and it shows up in relationships where the attachment figure has been inconsistent rather than absent. A securely attached dog rarely needs to test the relationship, because the pattern has already proven reliable. But a nervous system that has learned unpredictability cannot simply relax into trust, and every so often that alertness turns into a small provocation, because predictable conflict is still more bearable than unpredictable silence. Picture the ordinary version of this. An owner comes home, drops their bag, and heads to the kitchen without a glance toward the dog. 10 minutes later, the same owner sits on the couch, finally relaxed, and calls the dog over for a long cuddle. From the owner's side, this is just a delayed hello. From the dog's side, two completely different versions of the same person just appeared, with no signal to explain the shift. So next time that owner walks in, the dog runs a quiet calculation, watching for which version is about to show up, and that uncertainty is exactly the emotional weather system a shoe ends up getting dragged through. Here is the deeper truth this entire story has been building toward. Your dog is not doing this only if you are a bad owner in the way that phrase first sounds: careless, unloving, indifferent. He is doing this if you are an inconsistent one, and inconsistency is one of the most common, most forgivable, most human patterns that exists. Because it is simply what happens when real life gets busy, tiring, or overwhelmed. This is not a story about failure. It is a story about a nervous system, canine or human, that learns to read patterns long before it learns to read intentions. The good news is that attachment style is not fixed. Dogs can shift from anxious to secure attachment when the pattern of caregiving becomes more predictable, not necessarily more affectionate in total volume, but more consistent in its rhythm. What this looks like in practice is rarely dramatic. The same tone of greeting most of the time, even on tired days. A goodbye that feels roughly the same, whether you are rushing or relaxed. A predictable window after you walk through the door when your dog knows, from experience, that your attention will eventually turn to him. None of this asks you to perform constant affection. It asks you to be reliably yourself, because a dog who can predict you is a dog whose nervous system finally gets permission to stop working so hard. Which means the behavior you have been quietly worrying about, the chewed shoe left in plain sight, the stare held a beat too long before something forbidden happens, was never really a verdict on whether you are a good owner or a bad one. It was a message, written in the only language your dog has access to, asking the one question every attachment figure eventually gets asked by the being who depends on them. Can I count on you? Not today, only every day, and the answer is already inside your reach, not through stricter rules or louder corrections, but through rhythm, through the quiet, repeated proof that whoever walks through the door tomorrow will feel, to your dog, like the same person who walked through it today. If this changed the way you see your dog, notice the next time he tests you like this, because now you will understand exactly what question he is really asking. Let me know in the comments if you have seen this in your own dog. I read every single one. If this gave you a new way of understanding your dog, subscribe, because there is a lot more of this kind of story coming, and hit like so more people going through the exact same confusion can finally understand what their dog has been trying to tell them all along.